What if I told you that Counter-Strike still hasn't been figured out yet? I'm going to show you two new movement techs that have started to be used by players like Donk and Kyosuke. And no, it's not whatever people are calling the Donk slide. It's very different from this, and you might be doing it subconsciously already. Watch until the end of the video because I think it's going to change how you think about angles and wide swinging, and might even explain why Peeker's advantage is seemingly so good in CS2, since I haven't heard a single person talk about these things until very recently in plain words. Now for a message from the sponsor of today's video. If you want a safe and secure way to cash out your skins in under 5 minutes, head on over to sellyurskins.com. Sellyurskins.com has over 150,000 users who have used the site already. All you have to do is click the Sell tab, select your skins, and use my promo code BIRD for a 5% bonus on your skins. That's BIRD, BIRD. No shady cash traders or middlemen, just a few clicks and you're cashed out to any of the methods you see here. Head on over to sellyurskins.com and use my code BIRD for a 5% bonus on all of your skins. Thank you to Sell Your Skins for sponsoring this video. So for a little backstory before we dive into this tech, I was watching Jame review Kyosuke's match demo when he mentioned something that I've never heard anyone say, even though I almost have 10,000 hours in Counter-Strike.
И он выбегает. Но проблема в том, что он это делает без адешек. То есть, когда ты на адешках, типа, постоял бы за столбом, выбежал, твоя моделька выбежала быстрее.
So what do you mean that you can peek faster while AD spamming? At first glance, this doesn't really make any sense. And for my thousands of hours of KZ, I know that your movement follows strict velocity increases and decreases from your button presses. So how could this possibly be true? Let's think about if you're standing behind a wall and you have space to your right and you want to peek to the left to wide swing. How would you do it? Well, if you just hold your A key to the left and look at how fast you're moving, you cross the window edge at 178.70 move speed in this example. But if you spam AD before peeking, you're now further from the corner than the previous example when you began holding your A key. So you have more time to accelerate before peeking the angle, making your move speed in this example 201.82. This is possible because in both situations, you're under the maximum 225 move speed with the M4, meaning that in order to maximize your chance of making your enemy miss, you should maximize the distance that you peek. Let's think about this a little more, since if you were going to peek on the left anyways, you should always try to be as fast as possible. And what Jame is talking about is that if you're always moving back and forth, you'll be doing this on accident and peeking faster. This also means that if you're standing still, doing a little bounce to the right will make you swing faster. I'm going to name this technique the bounce peek, which I'm going to officially define as moving the opposite direction of the peek just before you do it to maximize your swing speed around a corner when you want to peek as soon as possible, but are okay with sacrificing a very small sliver of time to gain more distance from the corner. Personally, I believe this is going to immediately become meta since it doesn't take that much time to learn and it makes the peek objectively better and harder to react to. 201.82 move speed over 178.70 move speed in this example is 113% of the speed if you just held left, meaning you're moving 13% faster basically for free in this example. Obviously, this is going to be different for every peek. It's going to be slightly different, so there's not a flat number here. The point is that you can do this to gain free move speed. And you'd want to peek at maximum velocity if you could, but this technique maximizes your micro movement to peek faster just in the moment. And something that should be noted is that if you were to try to peek as fast as possible by moving super far to the right in this example, you will more often than not make a footstep before you peek, meaning that you might be giving a sound cue during your peek and inadvertently give away information to the enemy. But if you do the bounce peek, you're much more quiet, and if you were to make a noise, it would be as you were already peeking the angle versus before your peek. Okay, just to be perfectly clear, I think the AD-AD spam and the bounce peek thing that I'm talking about are almost equivalent, and I like the AD-AD spam more than doing the little bounce because it's a lot more unconscious and easier to accidentally get more move speed than doing the purposeful bounce technique. But we'll see what people like to do more. Okay, the bounce peek is kind of a bombshell to be honest. I really haven't heard anyone talk about this before, but the next thing I'm going to talk about is extremely interesting because it goes against almost everything you're taught about angles and peeker's advantage. So this other thing that I noticed about Kyosuke's gameplay from this video by Jame is him peeking really close to angles. You can see right here that he purposefully runs straight at the wall before swinging. So why does he do this? Well, first we have to think about this specific example, since this movement tech is more situational than the previous one. Bounce peeking, you can kind of get away with doing it wherever, but this one is very niche. So here in T-steps, he's jiggling for information to see if anyone pushes, and it's not to take a dedicated fight, but it's to get information about what the CT is doing, if he decides to peek super deep into canal, like walking through at him or something like that. But look at this, he holds W into the wall and then wide swings. So looking at this peek, to go from 0 move speed to 215, which is the max move speed with the AK, it takes 0.558 seconds. So since we know this time, we can match it up with this peak. And by the time he's able to see most of the angle, he's around 170 move speed with the AK, which isn't full velocity. So clearly it isn't about move speed here. So why does he actually peak closer to the wall? Well, let's think about how angles work and how advantage and disadvantage works when it comes to someone holding an angle. And this is where it gets crazy. One of the most basic concepts that people learning CS or any TAC FPS game understand is that if you're further away from an angle, the earlier you can see somebody if you're peeking at the exact same time. Because the person who's closer to the angle is more blocked by the wall. But in this scenario specifically, there's no way for Kyosuke to back up any further than the back wall behind him. So when we think about the person he's trying to fight, the CT and E-box will always have the angle advantage. But let's think about where this CT might be. Is he going to be here? Or here? Or here? Or here? Or any of the other infinite number of positions he could be technically playing in E-box. Okay, so let me exaggerate it a little bit for the video, because in this example I'm about to give you, this might make the fight closer to 50-50, while Kyosuke's example might be 40-60. When I say these kind of numbers, they're really just me throwing random things out there just to make a point. But anyways, if we have a similar scenario where the CT is further from the angle with no chance of him not being any further, the situation looks like this. Now think about how the CT's field of view will be obstructed differently if he was here, 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 or here. Now you might start to see the problem. If the T was to try to maximize their distance from the angle in this situation, he would potentially be inside of the line of sight of one of these off angles that the CT might be playing in. And since you have no way of knowing exactly where this player is going to be, you're putting yourself at risk at getting spotted by someone earlier than you think. If you could imagine all of the infinite off angles that the CT could be holding and average them out, his line of sight around the corner would basically make a heat map, where the white part of the image is where the CT can't see, while the blue is where he might be able to see or definitely will always be able to see. Do you see how being as close as possible in this niche scenario avoids every one of these off angles? Remember, people aren't going to always be playing the most common spot. So Kyosuke peeks closer to the angle rather than the middle of the stairs, as it's much more likely for the CT to not see him earlier than it would be if he were to peek further back. I want to reiterate how important it is to remember that the off angles you have to deal with are going to be unexpected, meaning that a player in an off angle will have more time to react to your peek, thus making it easier for him to micro adjust to your head or shoot while you're preparing to peek. It's all very complex, but hopefully this helps you understand and abuse peeker's advantage more. Kyosuke also does this again here in A main, where if he was to try a similar peek around the corner but from further back, he might have been exposed to an off-angle op holding a line that was unexpected to lose the gunfight. Another added benefit of this peek is it's much easier to know where you are on this gradient line, as you don't even have to think about it. If you were to take the risk by peeking further back, even though you're heavily disadvantaged, you'd be running the risk of getting caught off guard even further, versus doing a more consistent peek that's closer to the wall. Remember that CS is partially a game of percentages, and Kyosuke is taking the highest percentage method of peeking whenever he can. And in this niche scenario, that's exactly what he's doing. I have no real name for this kind of peek since it's really situational, but you can kind of imagine how on every map there's going to be places where this comes into play all the time, and places where it doesn't come into play at all. And to be good at CS is to be a jack of all trades, as the maps are so varied with their angles and positions that you must gain an intuitive understanding of how this works and apply it generally across maps. And it's up to you, the viewer, to find where this works and where it doesn't. All right, that's all for this video. Valve, please fix Train before pro matches are played on it, and especially fix Ivy. Peace.